All right. So welcome back to the fourth and final law school admissions secrets to success. We've already covered 3 of these, and we've covered a lot of ground, which I'm really, really happy about. And I think it's super, super important for us to cover those. So thank you for joining. Thank you for outlasting this incredible series. I hope that has been educational to you regarding the law school admissions process. What we want to do today is we're going to cover the last and final mile of the whole law school admissions process. I do encourage you, please, please, please post questions as we go through this process. I do not want you to shy from that. So please post questions. I don't think it's going to take a full hour, but we're going to get through a lot of material still. And I do really enjoy these questions because it kind of keeps this thing a lot more interactive. All right. Let me quickly give you the background again. I've done this quite a few times, but I will give you guys the background again of who I am. Again, from my background, I am the CEO of the company and founder. I started Right Track Admissions in 2008. And basically went to Berkeley for law school. I was on the law review, and that experience of trying to apply to law school was so difficult, so hard for me in terms of trying to overcome a poor LSAT score. I took the LSAT 3 times, did progressively worse each time, but was still able to get to Berkeley Law. And then I doubled down. I was on the law review. I started a journal. I got a corporate job like everyone else did, and was able to work in corporate law for a little bit before doing international development with the US government, and then later on becoming an entrepreneur, including leading Right Track Admissions and doing other related stuff, as well as being a strategic and business advisor to tech startups and stuff like that. So I've done a lot of cool things in terms of my career path, but I really, really love doing this stuff in terms of the educational component of what I do. All right, so that's a bit of my background. Let's get into the actual work. So here, what I want to show you is that a lot of what we're going to be covering today is in fact from the Law School Admissions Mastery course. I believe my colleague can possibly post on the chat group there. You can see the website, which is really just www.lawadmissionsmasterycourse.com. Again, that's Law Admissions Mastery Course. That's the information we're going to be taking a lot of this webinar from. And actually, frankly, all the sessions in terms of the webinar have come out of this mastery course that I created based on all my years of experience doing law school admissions, in terms of applications and admissions consulting over the last almost 16 years at this point. All right. And what we do in the master courses, we're going to be covering, or we cover the lay of the land in terms of the law school landscape, as well as preparation of the application, writing the story, and then the final mile, getting them into school. And that's really what we're going to be covering today. All right. So again, just to reiterate, parts 1 through 3, we talked about crafting your profile, assembling your application, selecting the schools and recommenders, the financial aid process, writing your right story, as you remember from the last session, which I was super, super jazzed about, super pumped about, because we covered a lot of very important stuff. And I really, really hope you found it useful as you're now going through the process of creating your personal statement, diversity statement, addendum, school-specific essays, and so forth. Okay. And then obviously you can do a really deep dive. We have probably about 20, 30 pages written in the guidebook itself. It's about 180 pages, I think, the guidebook at this point, and about 20, 30 pages of it is dedicated to just how to craft that perfect story for law school. All right. Now you've submitted, now you've created your personal statement, and you've crafted it and tweaked it to suit the different law schools in that, should you have chosen that path, right? Other law schools are going to be asking for that school-specific essay. So hopefully you've had a chance to use CLAP, community, location, academics, and personal. So you've put together those essays for those specific schools. You've written out the addendum. You've collected the letters of recommendation. You've drafted the resume. You've put all this information together. You've got it all, and now you're going to submit the application. So let's go through some very important factors in terms of deciding when to submit it. So oddly enough, like undergrad, you've got early decision, early action, and regular decision. So an early decision, it's from what I understand, it is binding which I don't really recommend this as often for a lot of our clients, because unless you've got a really super strong connection to the school, it is, first of all, you've got to fast track your application to have it done by November. So you may not have it done by then. Also limits you from having to ability to retake the LSAT. And you'd have to have it completed by October so that you can have the score ready by November so you can submit it. So it prevents you from doing that. You can't compare financial aid with other schools. So if you are admitted early decision, you are curtailed from being able to negotiate with other schools, and you can't really apply to more than one ED programs, because the idea is that should you be accepted, then you're pretty much, that's it. So that's some of the cons of early decision, but you have a higher chance of admission into that school. You could also be deferred to regular admission, which gives you 2 bites at the apple, which I do like. And you will find out that you got admitted earlier than if you apply regular decision, where you may not find out until as late as May. In this case, you probably find out by December. All right. One other thing I do want to say, and you'll see it down here that I talk about, is there are some schools like USC, Boston University, UCLA Law, that if you get admitted early decision, they will give you financial aid, scholarships, in some instances, full rides, because they know they're going to only admit a very small handful. And they know that you cannot negotiate the financial aid package. So they basically entice you to do this early decision aspect by saying, whoever is admitted, we will give them financial aid, which is great, because not only do you get the financial aid, but you get into a school that you really wanted to go to, and you find out earlier. So there's definitely some wins there as well. Early action's non-binding, holds a lot of the same kind of stuff. It's non-binding, but the chances of admission are slightly lower than they would be in early decision. Regular decision has the biggest applicant pool. Chances of admission are the lowest, but by just absolute figures, obviously more people will be admitted in regular decision than they would be in early decision. The key to success with early decision is you have to apply ideally no later than Thanksgiving, which in America is November, usually I think the last Thursday of November, so somewhere around November 25th is really when you should have all your applications submitted. No later than the first week of December. Once you get later, then you're put in the back of the application pool, and it will affect your chances of admission to these top programs. Personally, I started applying regular decision because I didn't want to do early decision or early action to any one school. So I applied regular decision, but as early as the deadlines for early decision and early action. So I think I had my first applications out by October, I want to say. And I think it was one of my top choices. Berkeley was somewhere October, early November. And I had the rest of my applications, the 80% of them done by Thanksgiving. And then a few of them I completed by that first week of December. The stupid thing I did was I retook the LSAT thinking, maybe I'm going to do better. And I clearly did not do better. I actually did the worst of all of them. And my score came out in January, only, to then find out that because I was so late in the game, because the schools were holding off until they got my score, that I started getting rejected. In reality, out of the 17 law schools that I applied to, only one law school accepted me, which was UC Berkeley Law, which I am internally grateful for. And I think I've given back in plenty, because I maximized my time at Berkeley. As I said, I was on the law review, started a law journal with a group of folks that's still ongoing, taught classes in the undergrad, and graduated, as hopefully you'll find out towards the end of this webinar, how I graduated not only debt-free, but with a profit. So I really, really maximized my time at Berkeley Law. All right, so that's a little bit about the timeline and when you should apply. This is early decisions around November. This is also around November. And this, as I said, should not be any later than December. All right, when you are submitting your application, a couple of quick things to think about. First of all, for the pre-submission side, proofread. It's unforgivable to submit an application that has errors in it. So you keep wanting to proofread, read it out loud, sleep on it, read it, sleep on it, read it. Obviously, the enemy of good is better. So if you spend too much time and you skip the deadline or you apply later because you just want to perfect it, that could also have some negative consequences on you. So you have to find that kind of balance between when to submit, where you've thought about it and proofread it enough, but also, so like I said there, submit it early, but not too early. That will take away from the opportunity that you didn't proofread it enough, but not too late, where then you lose the advantage of applying early and it hurts your chances. Like I would almost say, if you provide a perfect application in January or a very good application in December, or a, let's say, solid application in October, but with the same LSAT throughout and the same grades, I would say you have a better chance with a solid application than a great application than an outstanding, memorable application by February. That's how important it is to submit early. All right. I hope that made sense from that perspective in terms of timing. Also gives you a little bit of buffer if the application deadline is somewhere, let's say November for early action, early decision, and sometime, let's say December, that we're putting our deadline up. It gives you a little time for the school to get back to you and say to you, hey, you forgot to include this transcript, or you didn't have the letter of rec, or there's something wrong with your LSAC account that we talked about in the first webinar. It gives you a little bit of an opportunity to kind of quickly go back and make those changes and not be in a situation where in March, April, they say, sorry, you got rejected. You're like, why? They're like, because you never submitted this letter of rec. And now you're upset because had they told you earlier, you could have prepared it and fixed it earlier. I'll give you a small example. This is wild. I remember this. I submitted my application again sometime in the beginning of November, and then found that I had made a mistake and I had submitted a draft and not the final draft of one of my personal statements or one of my essays. So I was able to contact them because they still had a hell of a buffer before they shut the application window. Was able to pull back my essay, I believe, and then submit the right one. Okay. So just some things to kind of quickly think about. Once you've submitted it, I always say stay active, because if you get waitlisted, then you want to have enough information and done enough things where you can show the school in your letter of continued interest what you've been doing since you applied. I think that's very, very important. So always give yourself a bit of a buffer and stay active so that you have that information and you can update that school once you got accepted. Excuse me, not once you got accepted. You can update the school once you've submitted in terms of anything that you've done, especially if you get waitlisted, right? Prepare for the interview. A lot of schools will interview now more than before. In the mastery guide, the mastery course that I have, I've kind of laid out a lot of the schools that do interviews and how they do the interviews and how to ace those interviews. We're going to talk a little bit about it today, but really kind of I do a deep dive into that. Your academics, if you're still in school, you definitely want to ace your winter quarter or your winter semester so that you have grades that you can update the school with and say, hey, look, I'm still doing better and better. So you should never worry about my academic prowess, right? My academic abilities. And then finally, follow up with the school. If the school basically haven't heard back by April, but you've heard back from some, but not some of your top choices, then I would basically say, hey, listen up. I've heard back from Georgetown. I've heard back from GW. I haven't heard from you guys. I really want to go to your school. Can you let me know where my status is? Okay. Let me just see. We got a question from our friend Diego. What time to apply to LSAT, since that I have a very good material but with a regular LSAT in the beginning of November instead of applying? Yeah, hang on one second. In the sense that if I have a very good material and application, but I have a regular LSAT in the beginning of November, so such a damn good question, Diego. You always ask such great questions. So that question is great. And that's the balance I'm talking about, Diego, because if you submit by November with a 160, let's say 4, LSAT, but a fantastic, like your application can't get any better if you waited any longer. Like if you wait longer, application's still going to be the same outstanding application. I would almost say, honestly, Diego, submit the application in November, way ahead of the deadline. And then if you decide to retake the LSAT in January, you don't tell them you're taking the LSAT in January. You just retake it on your own. All right. And then if you get that 170, submit it to them. Say, by the way, I'm so committed to your school. I don't know if you've evaluated my application yet or made a decision, but I just want to update you that I've taken the LSAT and I've gotten a 170. So if you had any concerns, here's how I crushed it and taking it again. That's good for 2 reasons. One, because in that academic cycle, it could push you to gain admission. Number 2 is if you don't get into that top program and you get into a slightly less program, guess what you do? You defer wherever you got into. Let's just say you didn't get into Harvard where you really want to go with that 170, but you got into GW, which is a solid program, but you're like, now I got a 170. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to defer the GW offer and I'm going to reapply the following year with that 170. And you can do that. And when you write in there why you decided to reapply, you say, I reapplied because I had a higher LSAT that I took after I submitted my applications that I wanted to provide you. Oh, and since I applied a year ago, here's what I've done. So that's what I would do. I would get 2 bites at the apple. I would submit. I would update all the schools that you got the 170. I would see if that factors into their decision. Hopefully it helps push you over the edge in some of the top schools. If it doesn't, you can defer and reapply the following year with a higher LSAT score, and you've already got that painful process out of the way. So I hope that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what strategy I would approach. All right. Let's jump quickly, guys, to the law school interview. I'm sure some of you guys didn't even know that law schools do interviews. They do. And I think it's critical to do law school interviews. I think every graduate school should do interviews. Every school should do interviews they can, because there's too many people who are going to use ChatGPT, who are going to have other people write their applications, who have no idea what the hell they're talking about, who then get admitted. And then when they get to the school, they fail miserably because they really didn't deserve to be there, because they don't have the academic wherewithal to do it themselves. And that doesn't mean if you use a company like Right Track Admissions, because you can tell by my personality and by the way I've trained my team, we don't sit back and just let us do the work. We're going to empower you to do the work. We never sit and write your essays for you. You write your essays based on the brainstorming and the ideating that we talked about in webinar 3. We help you kind of think of the ideas. You write it down, you provide us with that, and we just work with you to perfect it so that you are proud of what you're submitting with the support of what we can provide you, right? So that's just something I kind of want you to think about. But the interviews really is part of this whole cathartic process, right? It's a cathartic process of empowerment and confidence boosting. We will help you through that. So when you get to the law school interview process, you're going to crush it because you feel so confident, you feel ready to rock and roll through the process. So let's quickly go through the interview process. Let's start from the top. Right here is how you should be thinking about the first point here, which is preparation or prepared, right? And that happens before. Here is where you need to start thinking about the strategy. The strategy is know yourself, know your school, know your interviewer. All right. Know yourself, know your school, know your interviewer. Okay. So with know yourself, this is where you kind of research, basically reread your application materials. Make sure the application materials are on point. You read your personal statement, read your diversity statement, read your addendum, look over your resume, have all that stuff top of mind. Remind yourself, why am I going to law school? Why am I interested in, in their law school? Why am I interested in this journey? You remember in webinar 1, we asked you a whole bunch of questions to really make sure that law school is the right path for you. So boom, that's when you start thinking about it. And that's when you really apply it here to know yourself. When it comes to know your school, this is where I talk about here, research the school, speak to current students, research past interview questions so that you have a better sense of what that school is going to ask you and what that school offers, right? Super, super important. Even here, I have it here. Review hot button topics in the news and the school, which you can do with Twitter or T or X, whatever the hell it's called. You can do that in terms of reading their journals, looking at their social media accounts. As I said, speak with the current students, speak with alum to really get the juice and the 411, like the background, the info of what that school offers. Get all of that, because that's information you're going to want to have on pause when you need to know the school. And then finally, know your interviewer. Have questions for the interviewer. If your interview is a faculty, you can imagine the type of questions you're going to ask are going to be more leaning towards the academic side. If they are staff, you can ask them more from a school administrative structural perspective. If it's a student that's going to interview or an alum that's going to it's mostly an alum that's going to interview you, then you can ask them more from a student experience, how they maximize it, what regrets they have, what do they hope, what do they wish they could have done differently, what was their best experience, and so forth. Okay, but make sure whatever questions you ask them are not so generic that you could find it elsewhere, but they are really personal to them. Now that you've prepared, here are the things I also want you to start thinking about before. Be presentable. So think about what you want to wear. Like probably what I'm wearing now is the most casual you should be. You should really kind of wear at least a dress shirt, maybe a jacket. I guess you could wear this for some of the more chill schools, maybe like Berkeley or whatever. But I would err on the side of a dress shirt at a minimum, maybe a dress shirt and a jacket for men. For women, maybe, again, like a blouse, something that's just presentable and professional from that perspective, so that you have that bit of decorum and that professional connection with that person that's interviewing you. So that's the presentable side. Obviously, shave. for men, or trim for men. For women, obviously, again, like, make your hair, like, whatever it is. I don't want to get too personal in terms of what you deem to be presentable, but whatever it is, imagine you're in an interview and how you would want to present yourself. Be punctual, and punctual on both sides in terms of timing punctual, and I want to call it technological punctuality, which basically means you want to deliver the technology on time and corrected. The internet needs to be firing on all 6 cylinders. The lighting needs to be good. The background needs to be right. If you're going to be doing it all on the computer, right? The camera is positioned correctly, right? You can hear the person well. And if you're being punctual in terms of the actual interview, you don't want to arrive a minute before or 5 minutes after and arrive sweaty and like a hot mess and all flustered, because that's going to screw everything up for you. So you want to make sure that you arrive on time and that it is conducive from that perspective, okay? So just make sure from a punctuality perspective. Now, during the interview, you want to maintain that professional decorum, not use slang, not do things that are going to be deemed to be like not professional. You want to maintain that professionalism with the person, but the next P is personable. You want to balance it with being personable from a lot of perspectives so that you could be likable, affable. You have that connection with that person, right? That's super, super important, because that's what they're going to report back to the school on. The last part is be polite, the last P. And that one essentially is you're thinking about submitting an email to them afterwards, thanking them for their time, their expertise, their energy in terms of, providing you with really critical information about the law school and helping you make that decision. So always submit a follow-up email if you can, so that you can at least respect their time. I know I love it when I've interviewed someone and they submitted an email. It's not a generic email, but it's an email that even references something that happened during the interview. So it could be like, oh yeah, I remember that moment. I really appreciate having spoken to that person. Now, we got a question from Latoya. Thank you, Latoya. How are the interviews determined? Are interviews required for those who are on the fence? It's not just that they're on the fence, but it really is like some schools like Northwestern, I want to say, are optional. I think they're optional. Some schools, I think like Columbia and so forth, and Harvard are by invite. So to your point, Toya, if they feel that you are a great candidate, but they're on the fence, they will encourage you to do an interview, but it's by invitation. I don't think there's not every applicant will get an interview at all, because some schools obviously get 4,000 or 5,000 applications, so there's no way. They've already sussed it out. They've got their maybe pile, their yes pile, their no pile. So I think it's the ones that are high maybes and yeses. If you're, I think those are the ones that get the interview. Yeses, I mean, it's, as they say, it's stealing, defeat from the jaws of victory. Like, you have it in your hands. Don't steal defeat from the jaws of victory and end up losing because you screwed up the interview, even if you got a yes because you're that great of a candidate. If you're on the fence, you really want to knock this one out of the park, right? By the end of the day, and you'll see, we're gonna go through like how your application is determined. Interviews are not the most important thing by any stretch. They are just kind of like the dotting the I's and crossing the T's and making sure you're not insane, so that, again, you would be a good fit for the community. All right. Boom. There it is. So as you can see, did I put that in there? Interview. You see it there. It's 5% only. This is my numbers. I can't tell you 100%, but from my research, it's about 5% of your admissions decision probably comes from the interview, maybe even less. 35 comes from the LSAT. I hate saying that because I hate the LSAT. I sucked at it. We talked about the difference with the LSAT and the GRE, but the LSAT is still weighed a lot. So let's say 35% of your chance of admission is 35% of their admission decision is going to come from the LSAT. So if you get that 170, Diego, it's going to really help you, versus if you have a GPA of 3.9. So there's almost like a metric. If you have a 3.9 GPA and a 160, your chances of getting admitted are lower than somebody who has a 3.5 and a 170. It's that much that they love the LSAT. The other factor is your application material, which is why we want to double down on this to make sure that you really have an outstanding application. And then other factors is your resume, what you've been doing, the recommendations and how they support you, the interview process, and then some other things. What's demonstrated interest? That's kind of like, if you went to the school, you visited the campus, you did a virtual tour, you took a class, that shows that you really went out of your way to show the school that you really care about them. it's not mandatory, but it could kind of give you that extra percentage or two to kind of push you over the fence as using Toya's wording in terms of pushing you over the fence, which is super, super important in a lot of cases. You may see this, guys, down here that says profile. A lot of court decisions have basically prevented law schools from using one's profile, their diverse background and so forth, to make decisions for law school. While that may be the case, I still do believe that law schools will factor it in, but not formally. So your profile will come in, and that comes down to what we called the personal branding, the profile development that we talked about in webinar 1. So make sure to go back and see that, or more importantly, to get the course itself or to work with us, and we can show you how to do that. All right, looks like we got another question from our good friend Diego. How long can hold their acceptance offer? In that case, if I play the JD wearing the PhD courses in February, how can I hold it until February in case of both acceptances? So you're gonna have to call the school, and it's gonna be on a case-by-case basis, Diego. I think that's the best I can tell you. You'd let them know what you're doing, and since you're not applying to, I don't know, something that's gonna dissuade them, saying, listen, I'm only going to do the way that you say is I'm going to do the JD either way, but I have to figure out if I got into the PhD program so I can just balance timing and so forth. So I just have to wait. Is there any way that I can hold off on making a decision? If it's early decision that you apply to and they tell you the decision in December and you must accept it by the end of December and you can't wait till the February, then I would say accept the decision in February, even if it's early decision. Don't quote me on this, but you may have to breach the binding contract for the PhD, but I think you can explain to them as to why that happened if you need to. But the idea is you're doing them together. So I don't see why they wouldn't hold off for that. And it's a legitimate reason. So I would contact the individual law school and tell them about that. And I think they would be very encouraging and supportive to you. All right. You have a couple of options. You get denied, you get deferred or waitlisted, or you get accepted. If you get denied, is it the end of the road? Yes, you can appeal, but really only can appeal, from what I understand, if it's an administrative error. Like they say you didn't submit your letter of recommendation to LSAT. You prove that you did, and it was their error that they didn't download it. Then maybe they will go back and re-evaluate your application. If they reject you by March or April, because of the clerical error, and you proved it was a clerical error, and they re-review your application because it was their mistake, there may be a chance where you get put on the wait list at best rather than immediately accepted. And then hopefully get off the wait list, probably be on some kind of preferred wait list because they made the mistake. Going to deferred and waitlisted, deferred happens if you were applying early decision, you got denied. Then they can push you into the regular decision pile or the regular admissions pile, so forth. And if you get, so that's why you can get deferred. If you went from one early decision, early action, you get deferred to regular decision. But I don't think you have to do anything else. You've already submitted your application, so they'll review your application underneath the regular decision process and let you know. Or you can get waitlisted. And if you get waitlisted, again, that means, and there's probably different levels of wait lists, but I don't think you're going to know about that. What you want to do, as I said, is stay active. So if you get great grades, if something else happens, then you can always go back to the school and write what is called, as you see down there, a letter of continued interest, whereby you will let the school know, here's what I've been doing since. I got these great grades. I got the scholarship. I got this honor. I got promoted at work. I did 1, 2, and 3. So they're like, wow, this guy's really, really on top of it. Then you write, here is what I've been doing since I applied. I know you guys remember that whole concept of demonstrated interest. This is really where the demonstrated interest kicks in at high gear, because if you got waitlisted, you can go to the school, let the school know you got waitlisted, check out a class. Remember, go back to how to select schools, which I believe is in webinar 1, and see what I wrote there. You can also get it in the master course, what I wrote as your cheat sheet of what you should be doing when you go to the school to really get as much data points and put yourself in the most favorable position. That information, those data points, are what you're going to basically be putting in that letter of continued interest as the second part of it. The last is that you got accepted. Don't run to accept the acceptance. Hold on. Wait for all the acceptances to come in. It's not going to change you and your perspective. If you got the financial aid package and they say you got $0, but one of the other schools, which is on a comparable reputational ranking, gave you, let's say, 5 or 10,000, you can go back to the school you really want to go to and tell them, hey, listen, I got into this, I got 5 or 10,000. from this school, but your school is my top choice. Can you match it or exceed it? They may give you 10 or 15, and now you've got a little extra money in your pocket. That's especially for regular decision, obviously not for early decision. So check out the reputation, the academic fit, check out the campus culture, go back to the school and visit it. Go back to why you would want to choose that school. Remember, in terms of choosing the right law school, and check your criteria. Just make sure that that is the right school for you if you have optionality. I only got into Berkeley. I didn't have much choice. The good news was Berkeley was one of my top 4 schools after Harvard, Yale, Columbia. I think Berkeley was my number 4. So I was more than happy to accept the Berkeley offer and go to Berkeley. All right. So let's do a quick recap and some pro tips before we close everything out. And again, any questions for me, feel free to put it in the chat below. All right. So quick recap. Brainstorm and mapping out should be happening over the summer, as well as setting up the standardized test. So you want to set up the standardized test, either the LSAT or the GRE, sometime over the summer and into the early fall, so that you can get your score and submit it on time, depending if you're playing November or December or October even. Finalize the list of schools based on the criteria that we provided you with the reach, target, and safety schools. Start preparing your application materials, letters of recommendation, which you want to submit. You want to not submit, but you want to request 2 to 3 months before they submit it so that you give them that courtesy, which we spoke about, I believe, in webinar 2. Lay out the application, the requirements for the schools, start putting all the pieces together and so forth. Then basically submit your applications, was what we spoke about, September to December. Start putting together and figuring out your financial aid, September and March, and then you'll get your final decision from the law schools between March and May. I've heard people find out as late as June. I found out people got in as late as July off a wait list. I had one friend that was driving literally to San Francisco to start law school at Hastings when he got a call from USC Law that says, hey, we found you a spot. And he literally turned his car around and drove right back to Los Angeles, where he was from, and he was very, very happy about that. All right, that's a bit of the timeline strategy. Now, here is a secret sauce of how I graduated debt-free. So, guys, crazy. Starting law school, I had no financial aid from the law school, 0. I had savings because I took 2 years off. So I worked at a law firm. So I had a little bit of money. So I didn't have to take out a lot of debt to pay my rent from the beginning. When I got in law school, within the first semester, I started making friends with people who were who had been in the undergrad or who are now at law school. They have connected me to their professors, and I started basically becoming a graduate student instructor or a TA. By doing that, they gave me a tuition tuition remission. So they would pay part of my tuition. My second year of law school, I took that year out. I went to Cambridge in England to do a master's with a bit of a focus on international law. That summer, and that first 1L summer, as you see summer jobs, I ended up working at a law firm in San Francisco, which was very, very fortunate. So I got a summer associate position and made the summer associate money. And I saved all of that and paid off my debt for my first year immediately. Now, remember, Berkeley at the time was about $20,000 in terms of tuition. So it was much, much cheaper than it is now. But I paid off all my debt immediately. Started that's 1 to 2nd year. I took off, went to England, still was able to finagle a summer job, even though I wasn't a law student. Came back in my 2nd year of law school, got a summer job that 2nd year of law school. So I had 3 summer jobs, which is obviously abnormal. Most people can do, not most do 1. Some can do 2. I somehow pulled off 3. That summer job, I ended up working 16 weeks splitting my summers between different firms. So that really helped me. That helped me pay some of my debt from graduate school, from that master's degree, as well as all my 2nd year of law school. So I started my 3rd year with the debt only for that 3rd year. I'd already paid everything off. Every semester during that time, in my 2nd year and my 3rd year, I taught classes on campus as a TA, as a grader. I got tuition remission and I got a stipend. So I paid off a lot of my debt that way. I budgeted at really low rent, like my rent was less than $1,000 a month. I had some personal savings. I had some side hustles, like crazy random side hustles. So by the time I graduated law school, I had literally paid off all 3 years and I had a little bit of savings after that, which is what allowed me to feel comfortable to jump out of the golden handcuffs and only work in corporate law for less than a year. So that was my secret sauce. Obviously, not everyone's like this, but it really, really was an incredible journey and experience as to how I paid off my debt, graduated debt-free, and even had a profit. All right. Last but not least, how to maximize your law school experience. And I really, from law school is a painful experience, but I really think I did the most I possibly could have to really enjoy that experience. So first thing is stay connected. All the jobs I've had afterwards from law school have come from my experience in law school in terms of the connections I made. So be social, go to the events, stand out, make sure that people know that you're reputable, that you're trustworthy, that you're not flaky, that you're dependable, that you're someone that reciprocates. I think that's very, very important. So be social and earn those key qualities. Take on leadership activities. As I told you, I ended up being the EIC, the editor-in-chief of a journal that we helped co-found. I was on the law review and on the board of the law review. That helped me. I just did a lot of things on campus to take on leadership positions, which have helped me immeasurably in my life. Academics, obviously, be on top of the academics. You want to do well because the better you do, the more clerkships you can get, the better law firms you can go, work at. Jobs in academia are more open to you because you've done very, very well. And you can get financial aid and so forth, scholarships, if you do well. So obviously academics is very important. Your summers are extremely important. Before you start law school, you want to be in great mental health because you're about to get smacked in the face when it comes to your 1L year. So you want to be mentally ready. The summer after your 1 year, hopefully working either somewhere where you're making money or you're doing something that's really clarifying what track you want to pursue after law school. Your 2L summer, you're hopefully again working on that job that you did the 1L year and you have a better sense of where you want to go. Then you double down in that 2L year summer and really maximizing. And again, get the cash, pay off your debt. I wouldn't just keep it and blow it on whatever. Pay off your debt. It's just so important to get that out of the way. Your 3L summer, right? After you've taken the bar, relax, enjoy as much of it as you can, even spend a little bit because you'll hopefully make some back as a professional, and it'll just get you in the right mental health space, which then leads to the final one, which is health. And that's not just physical health, but mental health. It's so important. I had a therapist in law school, especially towards the end, because it was getting so crazy stressful and studying for the bar was so stressful. And that person was unbelievably helpful in getting me in the right headspace. And that allowed me to pass the California bar the first time I took it. Physical, I really played a lot of soccer, worked out all the time. And now, even though it's been about 15 years since I graduated law school, I still maintain those same habits that I developed in law school and undergrad in terms of my physical health and so forth. And it really can kind of transcend your lifetime, which I think is so important in terms of your functionality, your productivity, and so forth. All right. Let's quickly cover kind of who we are. I think at this point you understand, I hope at this point you're seeing the caliber of the people that we are and so forth, at least me as the founder of the company and what we can bring to the table. I told you a little bit obviously about myself. In terms of this, we have a framework called GSET, which is guiding, story crafting, editing, and timekeeping, pretty much everything you need to really be able to stand out as a student and go through the application process with the utter confidence. Guiding is kind of like what we're doing right now, providing these webinars, the whole mastery course that's available for you. Obviously, if you take our services, you're going to get the mastery course for free. If you don't take our services and you've gone through all these four webinars, then you have a chance to win the course for free. Otherwise, you'd be paying getting a 25% deduction on the course. I believe the course is $99. Given how much time, hundreds of hours that I spent into it, putting this course together, I think it's a very, very fractional cost. And the reason I brought it so low is so that I can at least create accessibility to anyone, even those who can't afford our services. At least you can get all my experience in a course for you to really get you on the right track to success. Story crafting, as you guys know, is our bread and butter. Our motto is discover your story, get admitted. So story crafting is really where we shine more than any other company out there. I would pretty much guarantee that we're that confident in our story crafting ability. Editing is extremely important for us too, in that we help you take the words and the ideas that you have, after you give us the edit, like I said, we help perfect it and refine it so that it is something that you could be super proud of. Suffice it to say, even now, when I look back at my application that I wrote 21 years ago, I still get goosebumps because it's still that strong for me in terms of what I wrote about. And I lived it. So that's how you want to be that proud. It has to be pen dropping, it has to be that good in terms of the quality of the scholarship. And then finally, timekeeping, to make sure that we're keeping everything together. We have a project management tool. Your assigned expert will work with you to make 100% sure that your applications are submitted, not just on time, but before time. So to give you the best advantage and give you opportunities not to stress the other parts of your application or life by staying, keeping you accountable and staying on top of the deadline process. So that's our comprehensive application support services. We highly recommend that if you do work with us, that you take the whole package so that the writing is standardized, the timeline is standardized, and the whole process is as basically exceptional as possible to give you the best chances of admissions in terms of our comprehensive services. All right. Last but not least, let's quickly talk about our track record. I think we talked about this before, 96% success rate getting into a top, I think it's one of the top programs. I'm definitely not going to say the top 5, not the top 10, but I believe that 96% success is in the top 50 law schools in the United States. We've helped people from all backgrounds for the last 16 years. And I'm very proud to say we've helped a lot of people get financial aid and scholarships to get into law school, which is very, very hard to do otherwise. But we've helped them because their applications are so exceptional that the schools really want them to come to their law school and will throw money at them. And 50% less time. That is such an important statistic that you would be spinning your wheels, trying to find the right story, trying to figure out how it all kind of comes together. This is such a great process because what we do is we help you come up with the story, help you develop it and refine it and submit it way faster with a lot less stress and with an increase opportunity for success in terms of your application. And we do that by just being so efficient. And we've been doing it, as I said, for 16 years, so really mastered that process. I believe I've already showed you guys this, which is our team: Stanford Law, Harvard Law, NYU Law, outstanding applicants, diverse backgrounds, super accomplished, graduated near the top of their class and so forth. These guys are really, really outstanding, great experts, great team of experts. I'm very, very proud, far sharper than I am in terms of their accomplishments and so forth. And then finally, last but not least, these are the law schools that we've helped people get into. Obviously, I put mine front and center because I'm damn proud of Berkeley, even though its ranking has pummeled since when I went there, but still, it's some school I'm very, very proud to be a Cal Bear and have gone there because these guys took a risk with me. I was not, did not have the highest LSAT. A lot of other law schools did not accept me because of my freaking LSAT score. And I always want to say I'm going to come back and prove them wrong. And Berkeley stood by me, and I really will never forget that. And that's why I'm diehard on Berkeley Law, which I put them right in the center. And I put Stanford down here. And there you go, guys. We have the Law School Admissions Mastery course again, and you can get it by basically submitting this code. You get it for 25% off. And one of you guys who's been attending these sessions consistently will get the course for free. Just email us. We'll check to see if you attended all of them, and you'll have a chance to win the course for free. And I would love to give you the course for free because I would love to get your feedback on how you like the course and so forth. So that is it, guys. We've been together 4 sessions, almost 4 hours. I've given you of my time because I want you to be as successful as possible through this process. So I really appreciate that you've been with me through the process itself. I hope it's been entertaining. I hope it's been beneficial. And thank you always, guys, for being there. Again, for me, it's paying it forward. As I said, I didn't have a great chance of getting into a top law school. I did because someone like me was there on my side when I went through the process. And so I want to pass it on to you. So thank you very much. I hope that you guys benefit from this. I hope it gets you on the right track to success. Email us any questions, and I look forward to helping you get on the right track and succeeding on your mission to law school.